Hey everyone, Enrique here. Welcome to another review. Once again, we are reviewing number one Sentai Gozyuger, in this case, episodes 20 to 23. These are the episodes in which we get introductions to a lot of new gadgets for our heroes, as well as finding out a lot of things from characters, as well as seeing other developments through our this story. So, without further ado, let's talk about episode 20, Serious About Gals. Odo is a weird character. This is a Sumino episode in which she's still missing her sister Otto, in which they are attacked now by another no one, in this case, a version of a Gyaru no one. I'll explain what a Gyaru is, but needless to say, she can turn any person into a Gyaru gal using her powers. Until then, it was then interrupted by a group of girls, in this case, three girls who are led by a woman called Ichikawa Oto. Yes, Sumino's sister is apparently not only alive as well as being all grown up, but now she's like a queen, like the queen of the Gyaru gals, and more important than that, she's also a universe warrior. Specifically, she has the ring powers of Samurai Sentai Shinkenger. So she uses all those powers to fight the Gyaru no one. And that leads us to Sumino encountering her, realizing that that is her sister. But the problem is that Odo doesn't automatically recognize her. Hell, she doesn't even know or even remember having a sister. So that causes a lot of issues for Sumino, since after all this time trying to find her sister, she finds her and now she doesn't remember anything. I cannot think of anything worse than that. On top of that, we see that Fire Candle is in a little bit, useless. Like, he doesn't know what to do. Boquet has captured two rings, like the Flashman and the Go-Go 5 rings, and he feels like he has a chip on his shoulder. He has to find a ring, not only for the Bryden, but also for to prove himself that he can be a great warrior. So I enjoy this episode immensely, specifically because not only did we find out what happened to Sumino, or at the very least to her sister Otto, but we find out that Rico discovers that it was a man of gray eyes who captured Sumino's sister. And that makes him realize, oh my god, what the hell is happening? And he might know who that person is responsible for. And that's something that I'm getting into in a moment. But needless to say, I enjoy also learning about the Gyaru girls. For those who don't know, Gyaru is basically a subculture in Japan made by teenage girls as a way to rebel against the cosmetics of the preconceptions of what a cosmetic makeup should be for a young teenage girl. Like, there's some perceptions of what it is. It started in the 70s and it got higher in the 90s, but it's basically a group of girls who want to satirize or oversaturate themselves with accessories, makeup, and even color of tan, and that is based in the Gyaru culture. So in that case, it's good to learn all those things, and it's good to know that yeah, Gyaru girls have a specific culture, but they're not idiots. They are aware of their decisions and options. They just don't want to conform. And I admire that. It's interesting to learn that from this culture, specifically in Japan. I enjoyed this episode immensely for one reason: Sumino. In this case, the actors Maya and Mamori. In many ways, we have seen Sumino having a lot of goofy moments, but whenever the situation gets serious, it's actually good to see that she manages the serious moments and scenes very, very carefully. You can see in her eyes how much pain it causes her not only to lose her sister, but to find her and having the nightmare that she doesn't remember you or doesn't know who you are. That is something that Sumino is going through in this episode. And that is something that we as an audience really relate immensely. After so many years of losing a loved one or a family member, and to find them and they don't recognize you at all, that is more painful than anything. We still don't know what happened to Sumino's sister. We don't know how did she disappeared, but she says that it was basically in an accident. She woke up and she had the ring and started to become the leader of the Gyaru Gals. And that is something that Sumino is struggling this episode because she doesn't care about that culture. She doesn't care that her sister is queen of the Gyaru Gals. She only cares about helping her remember who she is and help her remember the good times they had together. And that is the very tragedy of this character, how much she has go through thick and thin to find her, and this is what she ends up with. But thankfully, during the episode she learns how to lay back, how to relax, and just trying to be a little silly. And that is something that I found enjoyable about this episode. It is also funny to see all the male characters dressed up as Gyaru gals, especially from Rico and Kinjino and Hoeru and Ryuji. They're all dressing up as Gyaru, and it's just funny to me. Although I should say this, Rico looked more feminine than before, and in this episode they just magnify it. Ridiculous. And while the episode was fun, it ended up in a bad note because not only does Otto get knocked down, but Fire Candle manages to snatch the Shinken ring from her, and now he became the new Red Shinken Red basically. He now became a new universe warrior, which leads us to episode 21, named Burning Festival Spirit Tega Sword Summer. This episode begins where we left off in the last one. This episode shows us how Fire Candle is now excited to have these powers. But on top of all that, the man of the gray eyes appears and kidnaps Otto. So that means that we're back to square one, where Sumino is now terrified that her sister disappeared, thanks again to the man of gray eyes. Someone that unfortunately Rico is well aware about and probably knows who he is. And that's something that we lead to the next episode, but I'm gonna talk about this one. Feeling down about Otto's disappearance again, Kinjino wants to cheer up Sumino as badly as possible. But she disappeared, and then another no one appears. In this case, the festival no one, challenging our warriors to create the greatest festival for the people. And that's the episode in a nutshell. Our heroes trying to cheer up all the people around in the city, trying to create a great festival. Kinjino going through thick and thin to entertain people, but to fail miserably, and making Rico very, very concerned about what is going on and why the man of gray eyes is kidnapping this little girl. So throughout the episode, we see that how they're struggling to be cheerful, only for Ryuji to bring a group of people of his own, in which he starts to, how can I say this, to entertain them with his prayers and with his philosophy and beliefs about Tegasor, praising him, creating a festival on his name. It's very entertaining to see because he is actually being very entertaining, and because he is the religious man, of course, and he wants people to believe in Tegasor as much as he does. And that is something that we find entertaining. I'm glad to see that Ryuji is bringing more dimensions to his character. It's good to see Kinjino realizing that festivals are supposed to help people to turn their brains off and just enjoy the time. And that also helps Sumino as well because she feels down and she needs something that could help her go through these difficult moments. I enjoy that immensely. I also see how badly Fire Candle is enjoying himself being a universe warrior and is wants more rings. He acquires rings that Bouquet acquire, the ones who are Flashman and Go-Go 5. He summons Shinkeo, which is the giant robot Megazord that we know from Samurai, and he's using it to fight our heroes. Thankfully, the heroes managed to win until the end, defeat the No One monster, but the episode also concludes with Rico realizing that he needs to find the person responsible, in which he starts to call Ray-san. So let's talk about episode 22, Benefit, Annoyance, This is How to Save Money. This is an episode for all the people who are saving money. Considering the inflations that we got over the years, I think this episode is very relatable immensely. Not just for me, but for a lot of people who are struggling with money. But let's talk about it. It is the episode in which we see for the first time the man responsible for the adoption of Ichikawa Oto, and that is Kushima Rei, a former friend from Riko's past. And it seems that they have a history together. And I don't mean like they dated or anything, but Riko feels very, very nervous and attached to this Kushima Rei. And Kushima tells him that he has been away for a while, trying to get better. He looks very sinister, by the way. He really looks like a man who enjoys being the trickster, enjoys the chaos, and is kind of tricking Riko into turning into against his own teammates in order to get all the rings. And that is something that we see at the end of the episode. But throughout the entire saga of the episode, we see Rueru finding this No One monster that is basically a saving money monster. Someone who is doing a lot of savings, who forces people to save money for a lot of things: bathroom, air conditioner, buses, making them to save a lot of money as possible. So it's the perfect opponent for Hoero, as you can see, since he is the kind of guy who loses a job every single time he is in an episode. Whatever he's working somewhere, he somehow loses that job, and he is back on the first track. He's back on scratch, and now he's finding this monster that is making him realize that why it's important to save money. On top of all that, we see Fire Candle fighting another universe warrior. Fun fact about these episodes, because this episode has two rangers here from the original Sentai. For example, the actor who is playing Kushima Rei in this episode and is the friend of Riko is played by Ryoma Baba. For those who don't know, this is the same actor who played the Blue Ranger in Tokumei Sentai Go Busters, in which he was the adult of the teammates, which was comprised of 3 people, him and 2 young characters. But needless to say, he's back as a new character called Rei Kushima, and is showing a lot of connections with the Blue Ranger of this season, which I found amusing in this sense, because it's the unoriginal Blue Ranger being the bad guy, but also being like a kind of mentor to this new Blue Ranger. Another thing that I found very amusing as well, the other actor who plays a version of the Red Buster, which is the show that the actor was before, was played by none other than Hirofumi Suzuki. And if you don't know who that is, he was the Pink Ranger in Avataro Sentai and Don Brothers, or as I like to call it, the Seinfeld of Super Sentais. I probably want to talk about that show one day because, man, that show was very entertaining and very chaotic as well. But regardless of that, it was good to see this actor playing a Red Ranger as well. And it was funny that he was actually playing like a seller, or at the very least, a chicken fry seller in the streets. And if you know about the Red Buster of that show, he hates chickens, or he's afraid of chickens. By God, the subplots or character traits they put to these characters, just ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. But regardless, we see our heroes finding this saving no one monster. Huero defeats him, but unfortunately, they still having a hard time finding Fire and Candle as the Red Shinkenger. But things get even more complicated when a certain thing appears because of Fire Candle's fiery, I don't know, disposition or a fiery will. But regardless of that, something appears, and it's called an orca buster. An orca buster is basically a weapon that is like a gun in which Fire Candle acquires, and because of that, it powers him up into kind of battleizer mode, like the one that we see in the show Shinkenger. He gets this white robe, which was one of the power-ups on that show, and now he's fighting the Rangers even much harder, and he's actually losing control. And that is something that the White Ranger, or the Sixth Ranger, Kumade, is recognizing because he has seen that gun before. But before they get into that, Rico appears in order to fight his teammates as well as Shinken Red. So it's ending on a very difficult note, which leads us to episode 23. The Lonely Star Awakened Wolf. So we start where we left off. We see Fire Candle getting more upgrades with the Orca Booster. Now he has acquired the Red Buster Ring. Now he's becoming even more powerful, but at the same time, he's turning more unstable, which is concerning to not only Lady Bouquet as well as the other people, but is making him even more crazier, and that's something that even Tegajun is getting worried about. She creates a villain through the ring, one of the original villains from the show Shinkenger, and which is going to aid Fire Candle with his fights. According to Kumade Mashido, he encountered that gun before, the Orca Booster. He tells the rest of the Gozyugers that this is a weapon that not only can upgrade the version of the Universe Warrior, like gave them battle license and all that from throughout the entire history, but more than that, it turns the host unstable, turning him more violent and more monstrous-like. It's turning the person who wields the Orca Booster into, ironically, a monster. And they need to find the gun fast and contain it as soon as possible. So they create this plan to attract it using Kinjino in an orca suit. Ridiculous how it's gonna work, but in the end, they managed to get Fire Candle as well as the other bad guy that they resurrect. And because he has been using the Orca Booster for so long, Fire Candle becomes into an even monstrous version of Shinken Red. This is causing even more conflict for Rico because he wants to gather all the rings to free Gushima, or to help him through with his disease that he has actually said that he had. Something that is making him die the more it passes the time. And unfortunately, things even complicated when he starts finding his members, or at the very least, Hueru and Kumade. But in the end, the gun gets snatched out of Fire Candle's hands, and Hueru gets the Orca Booster. It's trying to make him more unstable, but because of Hoero's will, he actually manages to create another ring, a wild ring, which is another power up for the Gosyu Wolf, turning him into wild Gosyu Wolf and making him more powerful to fight Fire Candle and the other villain. It also makes him realize, is Horde is making Rico realize that he needs help to acquire all the rings and he needs to be more cheerful, like, an idol superstar. It's good to see that these episodes allows us to understand and to learn a little bit more about Rico's backstory. We still don't know how he got into this position, but it's good to see that he realizes the importance of being an idol, to be cheerful, and to have others on your back. So he decides to help the others, and Hoero uses the power to defeat the bad guy as well as destroy the monstrous version of Fire Candle using not only the Orca Booster but also combining it with Tega's sword, forming Tega's sword Akashi, another version that is very samurai-esque and defeats Fire Candle, releasing him from his madness, as well as getting all the rings, the Red Buster, the Go Busters, the Go 5 ones, the Flashman, and what was the other one? And the Shin Kenja, of course. So he acquires all the rings, and he manages to make an excuse for Rico with the rest in order to tell them, oh, this is why he did this, because it was a distraction. They accepted, of course. Sumino also accepts it as well, in her own way, of course. But is making Rico worried because he's worried that Sumino will find out the truth about his friend Gushima Rei. And on top of that, we discover that Gushima has his own ring as well. But this one is not related to any ranger or any Sentai team. It's actually a blank ring, but is one that is going to cause a lot of trouble later on. So let's talk about the power-ups of the Orca Booster and the Wild Power Ring. So in this case, like I said, the Orca Booster allows the host to upgrade their original versions. So what I mean is that when you use the Orca Booster, it automatically creates a power-up for the Sentai Warrior. If you're one of the original Sentai Warriors and you use the Orca Booster, it can let you use the already upgraded version. So if you have something like, I don't know, the original, the Universe Warrior of Bokenger, you allowed to power it up and have the whole shoulder plates that he used to use in order to fire his weapons. Or for example, if you were like in Deca Ranger or an Ava Ranger, you get one of those upgraded versions. The Super Avare Max or the Deca Red Battleizers or Premium Red, from all these specials. And you also get to power up your weapons as well, or be able to use as a kind of a cannon buster, and that is something that we're going to see throughout the episodes. But also upgraded Hoero's ring and make him the wild Gosyu Wolf, meaning that he could use his ring and the Orca Booster to fire and to use it as weapons as well. He became more wild and he has more golden aesthetics and shoulder plates, and even his helmet is more golden like. And like I said, it can also be used to combine with Tega's sword and create a very samurai-esque kind of mega sword. Tega's sword Akashi, as they call it in this show. So overall, like the upgrades, obviously toy commercials, who doesn't love those toys? But yeah, enjoy the episodes, but more importantly, I enjoyed the episodes where Sumino was prominent, in this case episode 20. Out of all the characters that we have seen so far, the one that had the subplot of in finding her sister and trying to make her remember who she is. That's something that I find very enjoyable in this show. And I know, ironically, we know what happens to the actress later on, but I'm gonna get into that when we get to later on in the show. But needless to say, I enjoy these episodes. It's good to learn about Sumino and her sisters connection. It's good to see the connection and the backstory of Rico. It's good to see that Kinjino and Ryoji are doing a lot of fun stuff in comedy, as well as giving it their heartfelt moments. It's good to see Hoeru still being the hot-headed individual who's doing things his own way, but still with a good heart. It's good to see Fire Kendall getting a focus and seeing why he wants so desperately to prove himself, not only to the Brydens, but to himself as well. Prove that he can be a hero, but losing his mind along the way. And I really appreciated that. I really appreciated that from these episodes. But yeah, that's my overall view on this show, on these episodes. Next week, we go back to Daredevil Born Again and see how the consequences of Bullseye's actions can cause a mass repercussions throughout the show and throughout New York. So until then, I'm Enrique, and I'll see you next time. Peace.